Hi, this is Larry Asher. I'm the director of SVC, and I'd like to take you through the course track for the Content Design and UX Writing Certificate Program. First, let me just explain that the big squares here each represent a 5-week evening class. Those classes meet from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific Time, and because they're 3 hours long, 5 times, that's a total of 15 hours for each one of those big squares. The smaller squares represent a 3-hour workshop, and you'll see that they're paired. So that's 2 3-hour workshops that usually meet on consecutive Saturdays, a total of 6 hours per workshop. And the little rectangles represent a 90-minute skills or career and job hunting talk or mini workshop. Well, let's get into it. First, you'll notice that there are prerequisites, and you have a choice here. You can either take the 5-week evening version of Fundamentals of UX, or you can take the 2-part 6-hour workshop version called Intro to User Experience. They both cover the same material, and they'll give you a background in user-centered design and walk you through the process that companies go through when they're doing UX design and content design to get to a finished product ready to ship. Then once you're ready to join the track, the first class you'll start out with is UX Practices for Content Designers. What this goes into is the very specific interaction design principles that we as content designers and UX writers are writing about. So for instance, if it's a choice of a drop-down menu or radio buttons or choosing a location on a map, we write the instructions that explain to the user how to accomplish that. So first we have to know how do each of those tools work, when's the appropriate time to use them. The next class in the track is Content Strategy Fundamentals. And content strategy you could regard as that 30,000-foot view of a company's digital properties. So from a content standpoint, companies want to have a consistent message in everything they do, whether it's a video or social media or a website. But they also have specific rules that they want to be consistent about in terms that they use, or a process that needs to be explained over and over again. And so content strategy is responsible for that, and also the governance of content on a website. Where does everything come from? How often does it need to be refreshed? Who's responsible for doing it? On the second line there, you'll see a class called Soft Skills for Designers. And that is a class that is about how to be a good collaborator, how to give a critique and gracefully accept a critique, as well as time management and presentation skills. All super essential abilities to have almost without regard to what field you go into. The second section, or the weeks 11 and 20 section of this track, include these core writing classes. The first one being Microcopy and Writing for UI. Referred to that a minute ago, but when we talk about kind of the core idea of UX writing, it is writing instructional copy and error messages and all the things that people need to read about in order to be able to accomplish what they came to a website or app to do. So anything that tells you how to use that app or how to use that website or kiosk, that's microcopy. And as I say, it is at the core of UX writing. We cover that in this first class. The second class, Voice, Tone, and Writing for Conversion, is responding to the fact that most often a client is engaging a content designer or a UX writer because they want to sell something or see some action taken. Perhaps it's sign a petition or donate to a cause. But there's a measurable conversion in every case, and certainly when they're trying to sell things. Well, how we write about our clients' projects really can affect those conversion rates. And there are absolutely some best practices you need to know that will help you maximize your clients' conversions. The supporting class for that is the Usability Testing class, and that is what it sounds like, I suppose, in that every time we write something, we can write variations of it and then put it in front of users and let them see, number one, are they confused by the way we worded something? And number two, which is more effective? Again, if we're looking for conversions, you want to measure to see what strings of content produce a higher conversion rate. We'll teach you the methods and practices of usability testing in that class. Moving into weeks 21 through 30, the first writing class you'll take is accessible and inclusive UX writing. Now, probably don't have to tell anyone that there's been much more emphasis in recent years on making sure that what we design and what we write speaks to all audiences and isn't biased in any way. The next class you'll take during weeks 21 through 30 is probably the most important class in this sequence. It's the Capstone Class. And in that class, you will work on a project for a real client. We typically bring in two clients, a for-profit and a non-profit, and they will lay out a real assignment for you. So you'll get that experience interviewing a client and getting a download on an assignment. You'll then do that work, typically in a small team, and you'll present it back to the client at the end of, in this case, 10 weeks for their comments and hopefully their approval. And it has happened on more than one occasion that clients see that work and go ahead and use it. And in that case, you're leaving this program with published work, which is very, very impressive when you're putting that work in front of a hiring manager. In addition to these classes, you'll also be taking some workshops along the way. And each of these, again, they're two-part workshops that cover 6 hours in 2 3-hour segments. The first one you'll take is Figma Fundamentals. Figma is prototyping software, and it's very customary now in design organizations for the UX designer to be working on a wireframe prototype in Figma while you, as the content designer or UX writer, are writing the words. And you can collaborate with each other and make comments in real time using Figma. So we'll show you how to use Figma. The next workshop you'll take during weeks 11 through 20 is called Content Design Systems. A content design system is for companies that have multiple designers and writers working on their projects. And they want to make sure that how common repeated processes are handled are always described and designed in the same way. And so these common components are figured out ahead of time, the writing is done ahead of time and agreed upon, and so let's say it's a sign up for a credit card, you can pull that down from the shelf, from the design system, and just plug it into your writing without having to reinvent it every time. Design systems have become a very huge part of the UX design process over the last couple of years. The next workshop you'll take is called Working on Cross-Functional Teams. And this workshop is to acquaint you with the roles of the different people you'll be working with. You'll obviously know a lot already about what UX designers do, but we also need to know, what does the product manager do? The product manager is essentially the orchestra leader of the team. And then after you're done with your part of the assignment, it's going to get handed off to a developer team. And we want to understand what's important to the developers. What do they need to be successful in their jobs? How can we support them? So we'll look at all the different roles on a team and hopefully be a better contributor as a result. Then the last workshop you'll take is the Writing Case Studies workshop. This is because it's very common in UX design and in content design to speak about a project in a very well-defined way. So people who are considering you for a job or considering your work for adoption want to be able to read about it in a way that walks through the common elements of a statement of the problem, statement of the audience, iterations of the possible avenues you explored, and finally what testing resulted. Now, there are additional workshops or mini workshops that are focused on career skills. The topics for these may change, but the point of them is to help you get ready to go out and contend for a job. So we'll talk about interviewing skills. We'll talk about how to prepare your LinkedIn profile so you're very findable by employers, and any number of other topics that will relate to helping you get a job. Before we leave the course track, I want to mention that we offer some electives that you may or may not decide to take. For example, if you don't have your own portfolio website started, we'll help you do that. We'll show you how to write them, what kind of visuals to use, and how to get them assembled without knowing a bit about HTML or coding. There's a course on voice user interface. This is for devices like Alexa and Siri. It's a whole different world, and we can show you some of the best practices that are used there for doing content design for those kinds of devices. There's a class on whiteboarding skills, which you may not be familiar with that term, but it's a common exercise that is used in interviews for content designers. And then presentation skills speaks for itself. If that's an area where you don't feel very comfortable with your skills, we can help you bring them up a notch or two. So, last item under the electives is there is a mentorship program. Now, many of you already have, no doubt, some professionals who you know that you could lean on to look at your work and give you advice. But if you don't, we can set you up with a person like that. And they will be your mentor and your person throughout the entirety of this track. So this is somebody you can not only show your work to, practice interviewing skills with, but also tap into their network when it comes time to go out and look for a job. So that is the ultra quick rundown on the course track. If you'd like to know more, we would of course be happy to answer your questions. Either join us for one of our live online info sessions or drop us an email to info@svcseattle.com. We'll get right back to you. Thanks so much.